the lecture started, and we have Roy Gillet from UK, President of the Astrological Association UK, editor and author of several articles and books, and his lecture topic is Pluto transiting Capricorn.
It's all a bit of a sudden shock to be up here. Okay, we're ready to go straight away. You'll have to excuse me, I'm talking sideways because this PowerPoint presentation is very much, I read off it, and that's about all I'm going to do, I think, because as you can see, this is about building for the last from the last 500 years and accelerating for the last 100. Our world culture is at a launch point of change as radical as that at the beginning of the Bronze Age. And let me get these. Which way is it going? Ho ho. We all have this trouble from here. It works down there all right. What are the cycles that make me think this? And only time to give you a little bit of highlights from the thesis, so do read the full article in the magazine. So let's get on with it then. I came to the conclusion that of this dramatic change in social situations when I noticed this chart about 5 years ago, looking forward. I thought that's remarkable, having these planets in Capricorn, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, and I thought, well, how often has that happened before? And particularly I chose that moment, as you can see there, where Jupiter is conjunct to Pluto. And so I thought, let's look back. You can use SolarFire, the software that's very popular in the West, to look back over 5,000 years in the past, 10,000 years forward. And as you can see from that list there, this event that I'm showing you there has not happened. Forget about the Uranus for the moment, we'll come to that. Just those 3 planets in Capricorn with Jupiter conjunct Pluto has not happened since the 1st of December 2866 BCE. That's 5,000 years ago. The next one is in November 2020. And also, of course, we've got Uranus, which we'll talk about later. We'll come to that towards the end. But what about the sidereal zodiac? I thought that it's not just particularly coming here. I thought we'd look at it from the point of view of the sidereal zodiac. And although I mainly use the Western tropical system, I see great merit in the Eastern sidereal system. I'm going to explain to you why. I mean, we all understand the technical difference between the two. I think this was fully explained yesterday, but what I want to do is the meaning of this difference, this technical difference. Indeed, when the tropical and sidereal are used together, they give a much more complete view of life on Earth, in my opinion, and I want to now explain that. So I'm representing the tropical zodiac by a blue triangle. The idea is that the tropical zodiac, you live on the Earth, and you try to discover as much as you can about it, and then you want to, so you can change it, so you can remake the heavens. And so I see this, we refuse to accept the limitations of living on the Earth. We seek to understand and master them, to change the universe to serve our personal advantage. And this leads to great progress, but is it wise and sustainable? And can cause dissatisfaction, competition, and unstable rule-obsessed societies, conflict and war. And I think this is a mainly Western view of cosmic reality. And I came across the sidereal zodiac when I first came to India in '77, and I felt it had something to say about me and everyone else, even though it made us very different. Now, from the sidereal zodiac, we accept the life pattern heavenly cycles impose upon us. We live this life to the very best, and so we create the cause for fortunate rebirths, and this leads to easily satisfied individuals fatalistically accepting their lives, but exposed to exploitation. And societies may be pliant, they may be wise, but do they progress? And I would say, ask you to consider whether this is mainly a traditional Eastern view. Now, of course, things are changing now. A lot of the Eastern countries are accepting a more Western perspective, and of course, over the last 50 years, maybe, Western countries have started to understand the Eastern perspective. Maybe you could say it goes back a lot further than that. So when these two cycles come together, and they do coincide, there are different Ayanamsas, as you know. I'm using the Fagan-Allen one, which is quite close to Lahiri. But you see, when they start combining, and in Fagan-Allen it was 221 AD, the two zodiacs coincide approximately every 25,806 years. There is confusion. And the cycle's halfway point, however, which is about 12,930 years on, they oppose each other, and then the two viewpoints independently recognise each other. The blessing of the opposition, which leads to mutual recognition. So this is my feeling about the two zodiacs, so I certainly don't want to neglect either of them. And what I'm going to do now is very quickly cherry pick a few moments in the... let's look first of all then at the sidereal as well as the tropical zodiac. So here is the tropical zodiac, and now I'm not going to worry about the conjunction. I'm just going for all three planets together in Capricorn, Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto. And you see, even with that, we get quite considerable gaps. And looking at it from the sidereal point of view, we get similar gaps. The emphasis on the brown area there shows the big gaps, as little occasional moments, but essentially we've still got this 5,000-year split between a major focus in the Capricorn sign with these three planets. So if we look back to when the concentration was previously there, it was round about the beginning of the Bronze Age, the beginning of written history. We tend to see reality in terms of what was written just a few years ago, those 5,000 years ago, and the rest is just what we dig up and conceptualize out of what we understand reality to be in our time. So this is really quite interesting that the time we live in now hasn't been repeated for a very long time. Let's carry on with this. Why is there this interval? Well, this will be an interesting thing to talk about for a while. These lines are lines drawn between Saturn and Pluto for 4,000 years as we see the 2 points from the Earth. So if you see Saturn one end of the line and Pluto the other end of the line, and we're looking at each time at certain intervals, at 10-year intervals over 4,000 years, that's the pattern you get. Similarly, if you look at Jupiter and Pluto as viewed from the Earth over 4,000 years, that's what you get. And you can see the centre of this is offset. And this offsetting is why we get, I think, the distortion in when these cycles repeat themselves. And so what we're trying to understand here is a very fundamental motion, not just of a couple of planets, but the whole solar system, and the way it works, and the way it relates to us geocentrically. Okay, so the next point then is to look at the importance, since the beginning of astrology, we've been studying Saturn and Jupiter cycles. They've been known and theorized on by mundane astrologers for thousands of years. But now we can study Pluto with this major advance in computer technology and observational science in astronomy. We can study Pluto accurately. And so by narrowing our study to its transit through Capricorn in both the sidereal and tropical zodiacs over thousands of years, we can see vital lessons for our times. Now, this was beautifully animated, but unfortunately the system won't allow it, so you'll have to bear with me and take it one thing at a time. I'm trying to explain to you why it is that a planet as small and far away as Pluto could have anything to do with our understanding of the Earth. In fact, astronomers laugh like mad whenever we suggest it, so much so they downgrade it, do you remember? Just before the financial crisis, when Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008, a year or so before, they downgraded Pluto, which was about to go into Capricorn. I thought that was really amusing. However, Pluto, although it's small and far away, acts rather like a ruler. That does nothing but merely tells us where we are by measuring distance. giving Rick a chance with his long phase thing as well, but I'm just looking at it from a sort of ruler point of view. Pluto acts as a cyclic reference point. Now the picture, imagine the picture below is just 120 degrees of a complete circle of space around this point that we've arbitrarily called Pluto, just to give you an idea. And an equidistant path from Pluto predicts the very varied countryside we find on our journey along the red curve. Well, you can't see the red curve, but imagine there is at the point of each of those arrows. So if you look at the first arrow, it's got an estuary. The second arrow, there's looking at the countryside. The third arrow, you're on the outskirts of a town. The fourth arrow, you are in the middle of the town. The fifth arrow, you're on another inlet in the river. And the last arrow looks like a factory on the side of the river. Now, every time you come round and you're looking, if you know how far you are away, you know what you're going to see. But Pluto's not doing that. The thing in the middle that's called Pluto's not doing that. But by knowing where it is, you know exactly what you're going to see. And this is how, for my mind, Pluto works. So, why should we focus on Pluto? I'm going to show you how it's called the changing nature of social transformation over the last 150 years. So although it's too small and far away to have any direct influence, as a reference point, Pluto through the signs indicates, and this is what it has indicated, and you see I'm looking at the dates when it moved into the tropical and sidereal zodiac zero Gemini, and it was the death and transformation through ideas and knowledge. The beginning of the magical revival, the beginning of the Western mind beginning to listen to the Eastern mind, and the major technical advances and scientific advances and science fiction all came out of that Neptune-Pluto conjunction, and the Pluto particularly in Gemini. Then when it moved into Cancer, it was the beginning of World War I. It was the end of the imperial system of all the dynasties of kings in Europe. And it also led to massive changes in the family structure. And then when it moved into Leo at the beginning of World War II, and further on, you'll notice there's a delay when you come to the sidereal, but it's reinforcing what we're saying. And in fact, if you study this in more detail, I must give you clues for further study really here. I think you could start seeing what it was in the sidereal Leo ingress and the other ingresses sidereal that really reinforced what was triggered off by the tropical ones. But like this was to do with individuals and their creativity, the megalomania of people like Hitler, the massive leadership of people like Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin. This is very much Pluto in Leo. And the death, of course, of 30 million people in a horrible world war. Then it moved into Virgo, and you get the rebellion against, in fact, I've jumped two there, but you moved into Virgo, you get the quality of criticism, rejection of the past, the hippie revolution in the West, the sort of cultural revolution in China. And then in Libra, the beginning of the changing of the attitude towards how we relate to each other, acceptance of out of marriage relationships and births in the West particularly, the development of acceptance of homosexuality and various other stuff that started there. And of course, then when the Pluto moved into Scorpio, you get the transformation of sexuality, partly through AIDS and the horribleness of that, but also because of AIDS, the publication of the nature of sexuality and types of sexuality. In Britain, for example, every household in the country got a book that described every kind of form of sex you could imagine is a warning to not get into the danger of getting AIDS. It's a tremendous classic Pluto example. Then, of course, Pluto moved into Sagittarius, and we get this incredible acceleration of globalization, partly through air travel becoming even more and more prolific, but also with the developments of the World Wide Web and all that has stood for. Then in 2008, and coming up 2021 in the sidereal zodiac, we've got structures and authority being questioned and transformed. And finally, we have ahead of us the challenges of science and humanity in the 2020s into the 2030s. So this is why it's so important to study Pluto. So I'm just going to cherry pick a few ideas from the past, and again, I'm covering an enormous amount of ground in a very short amount of time, so I'm just going to be very quick through this, and see that today, some ancient historical events when the key Pluto indicator was in Capricorn is today tropically and will be sidereally from 2021. Firstly, looking back before 2221 CE, which is the period when the two coincided, just a few selected moments, all religions and cultures submitted to the supremacy of the heavens. Even the monotheistic ones accepted astrology and other esoteric knowledge, such as Judaism, the Kurdish religion, Zoroastrianism, still used esoteric understanding, even though they may have only believed in the one God. Now, certain things, just picking them up here, bear in mind the sidereal happened first, so things tend to be practically built and then they seem to be finished on the tropical. They're practically built on the sidereal. For example, the Trojan War begins, and then on the tropical, it ends. And Odysseus returns home. This is a myth, very important myth in the Western culture. It's not the same, it's not so profound, but it has similar ramifications in the culture as the Ramayana would do in the Indian culture. The second one was the building of the Temple of Solomon, which is very important for the Jewish religion, and it was started in the sidereal and finished with the death of Solomon. It was the end of that, and then there's all sorts of issues came for Judaism after that. And then Hesiod wrote the Theogony, which is an account of the Greek gods. The same year, it's accounted, as the Upanishads were written down for the first time, according to my research. So you can see that I haven't got anything to go with that. The last one, the construction of the building beginning on the great temple of Athens, the Parthenon, on the Acropolis at Athens, it finished when the tropical zodiac was transited by Pluto. So I'm rushing through this, but I just want to give you a good idea. When the two come together, it comes as a bit of a crisis time in both Rome and China. They were unstable. Astrology was mainly then being used for personal power. Astrologers were likely to be taken out if they didn't give the right predictions. This is the point where the planets transit the tropical, or start to transit the tropical, before they transit the sidereal. So increasingly, many world religions become focused on the liberation of the individual, providing he or she accepts a specific belief. Now, this may not be true in the Indian subcontinent so much, or even in Asia generally. Certainly true in the Middle East and the Western cultures, of course, with the development of Islam and Christianity. Astrology and other esoteric knowledge, therefore, are rejected and pushed to the sidelines, because we're not so, we're more concerned with ourselves organising things. So a few examples. Christianity was legalised in Rome under a Pluto through Capricorn, tropical, and sidereal for that matter. It's roughly the same time. The Council of Nicaea narrowed down Christianity to a very limited view of reality. It was also the beginning of the Indian classical period, which is very positive, actually. And as the planets transited the tropical zodiac even further ahead of the sidereal, Western and Middle Eastern cultures increasingly saw themselves as individually unique. Christianity and Islam offered a special role for all individuals who follow the true God, as I said. And from the 17th to 18th century, rationalism started to suggest that there was no need for a God at all, and assumed that humanity had the right to use and change the universe at will. And so, in my opinion, we're at a dangerous early adolescent stage in the Great Year Cycle. I think we know better than the Earth and the Mother Earth and Father Sky. And as we shall see, the Pluto transits through both zodiacs over the recent 500 years show clearly what the world faces today. So, Pluto in Capricorn building to modern times. Here we've got the time before last that Pluto was in Capricorn. Pluto posted his 95 Theses, the beginning of Protestantism. The Ottoman Empire started controlling more and more of Europe and of going to the East actually. Portuguese ships reached China for the first time. Islam conquered East Europe. It went through the Khyber Pass to India. The Spanish started conquest in the South America. Portuguese started a slave trade to the Americans. And sidereally, you'll see a kind of consolidation here of the Spanish conquests, the Islamic conquests. Henry VIII breaks from the Catholic Church. This is the development of greater Protestant struggle. He also dissolves monasteries. And interestingly, Copernicus, who was frightened to do anything, agreed that the day after he died virtually, he's on the Revolution of Heavenly Bodies, which described the solar system as being heliocentric, was published. And that's just a year before the end of the sidereal Pluto in Capricorn period, as you can see there. The Islamic control of northern India was reinforced and grew stronger, and conflicts between Catholics and Protestants grow, and a developing trade in the Far East included China. So you can see how Pluto in Capricorn was incredibly productive. I'm now jumping ahead to the last Pluto transit. First of all, tropically, is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the steam engine in the West. Islam reached its maximum as far as, and in India effectively became a British dominion. A British ship reaches Tahiti. Cook does his voyages and maps the Pacific and also parts of North America, actually. Again, the British control of India becomes more and more reinforced, and the first steam engines created, Declaration of Independence, and the publishing of a democratic pamphlet called The Right Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Now, this is all consolidated in the sidereal period that followed it. The US Constitution was adopted then. The French Revolution happened. Thomas Paine developed his ideas into a book called The Rights of Man. Even more control over India by the British. A population moving to the towns. First revolt against the slave trade started. Now I'm rushing you now ahead to our modern time. And these are the first sparks of change as Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008. It could take a whole day talking about what led to 2008. But for the moment, I'm just going to give you a few ideas. The global economic crisis is first warnings. The Lehman Brothers collapse happened a little before Pluto moved into Capricorn, but the effects of it were reinforced tremendously afterwards. There was a tremendous growth of the economies of the emerging nations, particularly China and India, of course, and this is a really critical thing for the future. And there's ongoing depression of interest rates, incredible expansion in debt, particularly in Europe and the US, but now it's all over the world, in China as well. Tremendous building everywhere, but to what extent is it supported by anything but debt and further expansion of debt? In fact, all Chinese debt increased by 381% between 2007 and 2014. And then we had the Arab Spring, the ISIL Caliphate was announced, Brexit in England, and of course it's close to my heart, and the election of Donald Trump. All these things on this period that followed on from the Pluto in Capricorn ingress tropically. Now sidereally, wow, is that it? 5 minutes to go, is it? Yeah? Did I hear that? 5 minutes, okay guys. Right, so the point, okay, in that case I'm going to jump to this one. We've nearly done it. Right, so now I want to just quickly show you, and this is all explained in the book if we do it rather quickly, when the brown symbols, as you're going to see in a minute, when greed and money motivate our lives, they point to major market downturns. And these are just indications of when there were major market downturns and there was a incredible stellium in Earth signs. See all the browns there? See that one, 1937, 1966, 2000, massive turn then with Taurus, and then the 2008, the one I've talked about. But the crucial thing is the one that's due to come in 2020, where you get this massive stellium in the Capricorn and a little bit of Taurus moon there, and and Taurus Uranus. This is the most sensational Earth energy we've ever had, and With the winter solstice, you have Bitcoin dropped. Today, on the winter solstice, when Saturn and the Sun moved into Capricorn, if you look ahead at the next 3 years, you can see this incredible concentration of Earth planets, all the lines, and these triggers, these pulses of challenge. We're going through one at the moment. This is why the stock market's beginning to crash. Now, you look, sorry, I've got it too fast there. 3 years ahead, you would see the same pattern continue right through into 2022. And now I want to bring in Uranus. When we put Uranus into the picture and we search for Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn and Uranus in Taurus, we get this incredible gap between the 3838 BCE and now. And we don't get it at all in Earth, but we get it in fire in the sidereal zodiac. My argument is that the Western mind is confronted with reality right now, and the Eastern mind is breaking new ground to rebalance the world economy. So, my final slide. Problem: globalization is leading to helplessness on the mass scale. Information technology gives powers to people who are hitting out immaturely. 4,000 years of paternal power leads to social exploitation, objectification of women, brute competition seen only as the only raison d'etre, conflict within and between societies, and ultimately war. This is the problems we're in the middle of, and we think we can't get out of. In fact, societies based on cooperation are the only really truly efficient ones. Proliferation of sexual identities, exposure and abuses of power prepare the ground for genuine self-expression. In many male-female forms we can see in our birth charts, we're all male and female, aren't we? And social and world affairs are based on respect, and so the celebration of differences. So if we can change our attitude to that and build up a system based on respect and kind cooperation, that's the only efficient way, the true efficient way to economic prosperity. Fortunately, it's the only way to lasting happiness, and it's the lesson of wise astrology. And that's my message from all that. I've rushed through it. Do read the article. And the only thing I want to add to that is that these 3 books have been an inspiration to me. They are all listed how you can get them at the back of my article. This is a book I wrote, which is a wonderful and beautiful introduction to Western astrology. Anyone who wants to learn that, I have 1 copy with me if anybody wants to buy it from me. And then at the bookshop outside, I've got some books, 2 by the great French astrologer, André Babou, which I edited, and then 3 books that I've written. And the last 2, the green one, Economy, Ecology and Kindness, explains in some depth why the economic crisis happened in 2008, and goes back over a long time to show the build-up to it and the cause of it, and gives advice for the future. The red book, Reversing the Race to Global Destruction, actually takes account of what's happened since then up to last year, and gives very detailed advice on how we could change the way we structure our society, our legal systems and everything else in order to change the way that the world is coming down on us and save the planet and save and have much happier lives between ourselves. Now, these 3 books are all available, the last 3, or they all are actually, in the bookshop. I've decided today I'm not taking them home with me. I'm leaving them in India somehow, and if you want them, everything's available for half price. So do have a look in the bookshop out there, and if you're interested in learning more about my understanding of all these things, do get something, or come and talk to me, or write to me in my email address. I'm always happy to hear from you. Okay, and also there's information about the the Astrological Association website and our conference this year. If you'd like a brochure for that, just come and ask me and I'll give you one. I think I've done it within my time, haven't I? Thank you very much.